Tens of millions of copies have been sold. It's been translated into pretty much every language you can think of. For almost a century now, one book has been the absolute go-to manual for the art of dealing with people. So what is it? What's the core philosophy that gives Dale Carnegie's book its incredible lasting power?
Well, to understand why this book was such a home run, we first have to look at failure. Carnegie actually kicks things off with this kind of startling confession from a huge publisher. He said his company, with all its years of experience, lost money on 7 out of every 8 books it published. I mean, think about that. 7 out of 8. And yet, this book, first published way back in 1937, became an overnight sensation and has literally never stopped selling. It's a total publishing phenomenon. So, what's the secret? Why did this one connect so deeply when most books just disappear?
Well, its success was no accident. It succeeded because it was built from the ground up to solve one of the biggest challenges we all face, just getting along with other people. Carnegie realized that more than anything, people were desperate for training in this fundamental art. And this points right to our default setting, doesn't it? When we're annoyed or frustrated, our very first impulse is to criticize, to point out what's wrong. Carnegie says that's the natural thing to do, and it's almost always the wrong thing to do. So this book is the answer to that flawed, impulsive way of thinking. So, okay, how do you fix that impulse? This brings us to the absolute core of the book's philosophy. This is the one rule you have to get if you want any of the advice to work. The secret isn't actually in the pages themselves. It's in what you do after you read them. Carnegie loved this quote from George Bernard Shaw. "If you teach a man anything, he will never learn." Now, that sounds like a complete paradox, right? But what Shaw and Carnegie both understood is that real knowledge isn't just handed to you. It's something you have to go out and build for yourself. And there it is. The crucial point is this. This is not a book you just read. It's a manual for action. Carnegie is adamant that the only way to master human relations is to actively practice, to build new habits over and over until they just become second nature. Learning is doing, period. Now, it's one thing to talk about a rule, but it's another thing entirely to see it in action. Carnegie gives us this really powerful example of how this philosophy can literally change a person's life and their work. He tells the story of this employer who took one of his courses. This guy was a manager, and hey, by his own admission, he wasn't a very good one. He was in charge of 314 people, and his main tools were just criticism and condemnation. I mean, just look at this transformation. It's night and day. Before applying these principles, his workplace was, well, it was toxic. He drove his employees hard, never had a kind word, and because of that, they avoided him like the plague. He said he had 314 enemies. But then, after he stopped condemning and started showing sincere appreciation, everything changed. He inspired this whole new spirit of loyalty and enthusiasm. And here's the proof, right from the man himself. This is what learning by doing actually looks like. He didn't just read about a new idea, he actively changed his day-to-day behavior. He practiced a new way of interacting, and in doing so, he turned 314 enemies into 314 friends. Okay, so how can you or I get a similar result? Carnegie was super clear that this book should be treated like a working handbook. It's a tool, and he gives really specific instructions on how to use it right. First, he says to apply the rules constantly. Don't wait for some big, important moment. Second, when you're facing a specific challenge, a tough conversation, an angry customer, don't just react. Stop, open the book, and review the principles. And third, and this one's kind of fun, make a game out of it. He even suggests asking your family to charge you a nickel every time they catch you breaking a rule. You got to make mastering these skills a lively game. And all this brings us to the most important takeaway of all. If you think this book is just a collection of clever social hacks or tips for networking, you're missing the entire point. Carnegie was going for something much, much deeper. He says this over and over again. You are not just acquiring information. Reading the words on the page, that's the easy part. The real work is in the application. You're trying to overwrite years of old knee-jerk habits with new, more effective ones. And that takes time, it takes persistence, and it takes daily practice. He couldn't be more direct about it. He's not talking about tricks or flattery. He repeats it just to make sure you get it. I am talking about a new way of life. A fundamental shift in how you see and interact with every single person you meet. That is the true promise of this book. So now that we understand the philosophy of how to use this book, the real question is, are you ready to learn the very first principle and actually start putting it into practice?